was giving me that.
I like your shirt, Jerrell.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, I was thinking of Nick's shirt.
Oh, I like your shirt too.
I like your shirt too.
And I like your shirt too, Dawon. I love a denim moment. So
you haven't said anything about my cleavage.
Come on. I like
right.
And I love
she trimmed. Look, she trimmed because the taco meat ain't there.
Right. Then she's like getting ready for spring, boo.
Hey, aunties, it's Nick, the host of the Queer Spirit podcast. What's brewing today?
Introducing AunTea Limoncello.
Ask your aunties, grower, not a shower.
And call me by your name, Lil Nas X. So get your cups ready for Minoritea Report. Well, hello. Welcome to Minoritea Report.
What's up?
Hey, boos.
How's everyone doing today?
Good. Got my coffee here. Just it's early. It's earlier than when we normally record.
Yes, it is. And on a Saturday.
Saturday.
So thank you for getting up early and out of bed and hopping on and bringing all that sass today.
Yeah, there's that protecting my peace part for me.
Okay, love. I had a dream that I was cooking it with Michelle Obama. That's how I woke up today.
Okay.
So, I'm just in this mood where I'm like, you know what? She gonna be classy today.
She said, let me see you walk.
Y'all getting a classy Auntie Henny today.
Okay, I know that's right.
For like 5 minutes.
That's an oxymoron. If I ever heard one.
Right.
Because those two, classy and Hennessy, just do not go together.
It's like you get spurts of it.
Right.
It's like the first 15 minutes, and then we know the rest of the whole episode is just going to be Hennessy.
Well, community.
When it kick in.
Right, exactly. Well, community, we have another special guest with us this week. Oh, what happened?
We lost him.
We lost again. He said, no, you don't. No, you don't. Not right now.
Look, you started with the Hennessy, and she said, nope.
No, yeah. I'm not ready for the Henny.
Spirit today.
It's not even 10 a.m. and we talk about Henny. I'm not here for it.
Well, we had a special guest, but we'll wait till he gets back in. But I guess in the
meantime, I guess we can talk about what's been going on. Girl. First of all, let's talk about the vote and stuff that's going on, because that's the first thing. Speaking of Michelle Obama, we need to get this off. She's channeling through. You know what? Mike Kemp can suck my dick.
Brian Kemp.
Whoever Mike Kemp is, your name Mike Kemp. You might be able to suck it. I don't know. Your name Mike Kemp. You can.
Oh, Mike Kemp. He the Dodger, right? Wasn't he the Dodger?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, yeah. Fuck. I will fuck Mike Kemp, but fuck Brian Kemp. Living here in Georgia, where all this shit is going down, you knew it was bad. We saw it all through the last election cycles, even Stacey Abrams and things like that. But then now to see us come triumphantly turning the state blue, getting Biden in the White House, getting Kamala in the White House, you knew they were going to come back swinging hard. And so it's just they came swinging hard. They came swinging hard though. Even just as minute as you can't give food and water to people
they make that a federal crime.
Yeah.
It's not that you just can't do it, that they made it a federal crime. Not even a civil, not even like a misdemeanor, a federal crime.
Yes.
Which means you can't vote. To give food and water to people.
That part.
Waiting in line, which means you can't vote.
And that's the part people miss. A lot of people, because I've seen a lot of people and heard a lot of people down here saying, oh, well, I'll still do it nonetheless. They ain't going to catch me. No, if they catch you, that means your vote is now taken away. So that's the crazy. Welcome back, Nick.
Yes, Nick.
Sorry about that. My computer totally just crashed, which never happens.
No worries.
Oh, you're all good.
Look,
I
we
think
thought
my computer just didn't like doing GarageBand and Zoom at the same time. I think it was like, too much.
It very well could be.
Yeah,
Very
that
well
could very
could
happen.
be.
That's a very powerful GarageBand. It's a very powerful and like heavy tool. So having this running is tough.
Hey, you know what? Let's do a quick 1, 2, 3 clap as well to make sure I still have everything aligned. So
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Here we go. Hey, community, you're just getting all the behind the scenes. That's what this is. Ow.
Sorry about that.
Oh, not
That's
a
all
problem.
good. Look, we are used to like adjusting and being nimble and flexible and all those kinds of things. So it's all good. We're just glad you were able to join us. We thought maybe the thought of Hennessy really threw you off, and you just said, "I had to go. I can't deal with this."
I did not even get that far.
I love it. But we were just quickly talking like off the jump, just like the things that are going down right now in Georgia before we get to know you even better. But what are your thoughts specifically of what you've seen, kind of like the new laws that have come into play now here in the state of Georgia?
You're talking about the voting one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's really awful. I mean, I actually don't vote in person. I vote by mail because we can do that in California, and I know that those laws are different in every state, and I think that actually should be a national law, that you can just vote by mail, and then we don't have to worry about all of these things, especially with what's happening right now with coronavirus, and we don't know what's going to happen in the future with any other health issues, that people should just be able to vote from home.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. I would love to see, since, especially since we have, the majority to be able to pass things at that level. Like if we can get that, nationwide vote, from home, thing, like that would be amazing. Because honestly, in Washington, state of Washington, we all vote from home too. Like you have polling places that you can go to if you didn't register to be able to vote from home, so you didn't get the mail-in ballot. But other than that, there's just like these big old boxes that are just spread out throughout the state, and you just go and drop it in there, and that's it.
And that's part of
the new, can just put it back in the mailbox.
And that's part of the new law that they also passed, is they've gotten rid of a lot of those absentee ballot boxes now.
Boxes. Yeah.
So like they're making it so difficult to find the box if you can absentee vote. Now you have to show your ID to absentee vote. You can't, like we were just saying, you can't give like food and water and stuff to people in line to vote, or it's a federal crime. And then like it literally it's so mind-boggling. But I'm just hoping they piss us off again so much that we're like, hold on, okay, you're gonna make it this much harder? Guess what? We're gonna show up extra for the next cycles. That's my hope and prayer. But
it's like the Atlanta GOP said, "Oh, we turning blue. Oh, I got your blue."
Literally.
they're doing everything that they can to make sure that, people who are disenfranchised, minority individuals, Black individuals specifically, because they were the ones that really carried the state, they're doing everything they possibly can to prevent them from voting, which is the most un-American thing, and the most un-American thing that can be done.
And I just really hope that the Democrats at this point stop playing fair. It's time to take off the fucking gloves, bitch. Put your Vaseline on, put your sneakers on, bitch, and get to scrapping because they fighting, they throwing blows, they throwing these low blows, and this whole when they go low, we go high. It's out the window.
Yeah.
Look, now Michelle gone. See, Auntie is here.
They got Auntie Kamala, the AKA, in the house. So when they go low, let's take them to the flow.
Let me tell you, it's a wrap. It's done. I'm tired of this whole let's be nice type of bullshit. So they need to get this shit happening in the next 2 years, because with that change, it's going to make it that much easier. And in the next 2 years, when they have to vote for certain, seats and stuff like that, for them to get what they need to then be back in power. So
we really need Stacey Abrams to run here for governor next year.
Absolutely.
2022.
If she get in there, everybody, all Black folks are showing out.
Because we're all still bitter about how it went down the last time.
Yeah.
And the only way I feel like for specifically the Black community to come out in the droves that are necessary is it has to be her. And so she could get back in office and kind of right a lot of these wrongs. Hopefully, obviously, we got to get a lot of the congressmen and women in there as well. but it's just like, I don't know. I don't, if he's here another 4 years, this was going to just be a blip in the map, and we're just going to be red again for like the next 40 years.
Yeah.
Before we get too deep into the conversation, let's just formally welcome Nick back to the conversation. And Nick, just tell us a little bit about yourself and about
and give us your auntie name too.
Yes, start off with your auntie name.
Okay, so I picked AunTea Limoncello because limoncello is a lemon liqueur from Italy, and I have Italian heritage, and I really like lemon, so that's why I picked AunTea Limoncello.
Do you make your own?
I don't, but my mom actually has, and I know other people who have. It's actually not that hard. You just sort of soak lemon peel in vodka for a month or so, and then you add some sugar, and that's about it.
Love it.
And it's like the alcohol content is super strong.
Here for it.
I don't know. This pandemic, I don't have the liver I used to have. 2 drinks, and she like, woo.
But so you're the host of Queer Spirit Podcast. I have a shit ton of questions. So, but like Dawon said, how did you get to Queer Spirit Podcast? What was that journey to that? And then we'll almost maybe backtrack a little bit.
Okay, I'm sorry. I can't help but laugh because I told you my upstairs neighbors are moving out today, and now I'm literally hearing drilling. Probably unscrewing is what they're doing.
Probably.
They're trying to maintain that. They're trying to maintain that security deposit.
Right.
Yeah. So I apologize again.
No worries.
All good.
Yeah.
All good.
So yeah, I actually started the Queer Spirit podcast. I'm in the 4th season now, and I am a psychotherapist by trade. That's my main gig, and I've been a psychotherapist in private practice for about 10 years now here in San Francisco, and I primarily work with the queer community. And I'm also just really interested in spirituality. And from a psychology perspective, there's a branch of psychology called transpersonal psychology, which is more of a holistic spiritual perspective. And really what it looks at is using people's own spiritual resources and practices as a way to support them through any kind of struggle that they're having. And it's not necessarily religious, it's just whatever their spiritual practice is. So it could be, gratitude or prayer or yoga or meditation, or if they do actually belong to an organized religion, that's okay too. Whatever they find support in as a source of internal support. And so I've been really interested in a variety of different kinds of spirituality and spiritual practices, and especially within the queer community and what different queer people around the world are using as their spiritual practice. And so on this Queer Spirit podcast, I have conversations with artists, healers, and activists who do a variety of work to support the queer communities. And sometimes that involves spirituality, and sometimes it doesn't. It just involves, their art or their activism, or we may talk about their spiritual practice, but it's really just bringing more of a holistic view in terms of health and wellness, and bringing that inspiration to people around the world, and queer people who maybe have been extricated from their religious practice because of their sexuality or their gender identity, and help them understand that they can find some other kind of practice or resource to support them. So that's the Queer Spirit podcast in a nutshell.
Love it. I know at the beginning of each episode, you I forget the exact wording, but you just say something like giving helping queer spirits flourish and get their empowerment and things like that. Is there I guess a person or a situation that was your first time remembering a queer person or situation giving you that empowerment? Because I was when I heard your podcast, I was just God, who was the very first queer person or first queer moment that I realized that, hey, maybe I can be myself, or felt a little empowered, okay, they're being their full self. maybe it gives me that little root of hope to come out and things like that. So is there a specific
stand
person?
in your own truth, to
right?
Stand and own your own truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. No one's ever asked me that. And I think reflecting on it, I know now because of, growing up and knowing who the queer people were in my life at the time, even though I may not have been aware of my own queerness or of other people's queerness, but there were, a few queer people here and there in my life. And, I grew up in a suburb of LA and I grew up Catholic. And even though, a lot of people have bad experiences with the Catholic Church and they're not doing very well today, given all the the practices and guidelines that are being reinforced right now. But the particular church community I grew up in I never heard anything from the church or from the pulpit even that was homophobic. And I recall even at least one or two times when I was a teenager, the priest in church saying we need to welcome everyone, even people who identify as, well, back then in the 90s, he was probably just saying gay or homosexual. And, there were probably some microaggressions and little things here and there in community and stuff like that. But it was never this big overt thing like the fire and brimstone and you're going to hell and that kind of thing. And, there were people in the community who maybe they didn't have a huge impact on me, but the fact that they were there and the fact that I maybe unconsciously knew that they were queer was helpful, I think. And then I moved to San Francisco to go to college, and I went to a Catholic school, but it was in San Francisco, and they were not like super heavy-handed on the Catholicism at all. They really emphasized, exploring other kinds of religious practices or spiritual practices. And it was actually my aunt who, well, I call her my aunt. She's not really an aunt, but she's very much like an aunt to me.
AunTea Limoncello.
We got exactly those too.
And she was in the Peace Corps with my father in Turkey, and one of the things that she said to me was that she realized when she was in Turkey that she couldn't go into a church or even a mosque sometimes because she was a woman, or she had to go to a separate part, was that because she wasn't able to practice her own spiritual beliefs while she was there, she realized that, being spiritual or having a spiritual practice doesn't mean you have to go to church. You can find it in other ways. So that really opened my mind and started exploring other spiritual practices and earth-based spiritual practices and Buddhism and that kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Like Dawon, Jerrell, like, is there a particular person? Like, I'm just curious, and like, do you recall a person or situation where it was just like a queer moment that empowered you, that like took root? You're like, I can strive to be who I am?
I'm still looking for that individual. I've been for probably like 4 years. I've been trying to find her. She
damn near getting ready to be married. She's looking for somebody to...
I think she's trying to find the person that did that for her.
Yeah, I've been trying to find the person.
So she's still looking for them. She's like, somebody open my eyes. That's the Jerrell girl. She across the street.
Right.
No, I've been looking for her on social media. In 2005, her name was Jennifer. She was trans, and she was like between that summer of sophomore, junior year and senior year. That's when she transitioned and came and introduced us to her, formerly now known as Jennifer. But I just remember how much hate she got in school, and I remember just like being that person, like, you know what, because I was one of the popular people, so like I would walk her, like when we had a class, I would walk her to her next class just to make sure that she was good when I could, and that literally encouraged me from my, like, between that first semester and that winter break and coming out during that winter break. I came back after winter break, and then I came out, like having classes with her and watching her just own her truth and be comfortable and brave, you know, to be herself in high school in 2005 when you don't have a lot of trans representation at that point too. You know, like, it was just amazing. It was really encouraging. And so I've been looking for Jennifer for a few years. And actually, like, probably actually I want to say about 6 years now, because I'm the class president and we're in the same class. And so it's my job to do our 10-year, 20-year reunion, all the rest of that stuff. And I was looking for her to give her an invite and just, you know, make sure she's part of it and everything like that too. And just to reconnect and honestly say thank you, because I never got the chance, you know, to do that. Because she ended up transferring schools in the middle of the year because of a lot of that stuff. So yeah, so been looking for her.
Do you have one at all, Dawon?
You know, I did a lot of growing up just very independently. I will say though that, so I didn't have any individuals in my, like, those formative years of like my coming outness that really gave me the courage, like, personally. But I remember a TV personality that gave me courage, and that was Pedro, actually, from the San Francisco season of The Real World.
Yeah.
And what struck me as, so that happened, I think I was maybe a junior or senior. I can't remember what year that came out. 93, 90, 92, something like that. I was a junior or senior in high school, and I knew that I was going to college, and I knew that I was going to go away to college to live on campus. And that was my opportunity to just, you know, like, say bye-bye to high school. You know, this was in the 90s. So this was like, you know, AIDS epidemic, you know, we're still reeling from that. You know, HIV cases were still very high, and, you know, we had some education about it, but it's still, you know, like, was the forefront of those conversations. But, you know, he came on the screen, and it was the first time that I saw someone who really lived in his truth, who was HIV positive, and who also didn't reinforce the stereotypes of what it meant to be gay, in terms of, you know, like, oh, you're, you know, super effeminate, et cetera. He was a person of color, and he was an activist and an educator, and just had really great presence. And I thought, man, you know, if you know, he can do this in the midst of dealing with his own personal situation, I can have the courage to, you know, to come out. And that was, for me, like, the catalyst, the absolute catalyst. That was seeing him forced me, or gave me the courage to stand up in front of my bedroom, you know, dresser mirror and speak to myself the words out loud and say, I'm gay, out loud. Like, it's always been something in my head, but I never had the courage to even say it out loud. And I've always been a fan of this notion that you speak things into existence, right? And so I knew that if I ever said it out loud, that it becomes real. I couldn't deny it anymore, and I'd have to confront it, and I'd have to deal with it, and I'd either have to embrace it and figure out how to live with it, or I'd have to, you know, choose another way. And that was it for me.
That's interesting.
What about you?
That's what I was trying to think, because, like, listen to Nick's podcast, like, I just love that opening question that you always have on that, or maybe even just that opening statement you have in each episode. And I don't know. I honestly don't know the first queer moment, you know, and I want to remember because just growing up in small town America, there weren't a lot of folks, at least that were out, none that I really knew. There was maybe some that you suspected and things like that, just maybe based off stereotypes even then, that might have been right, wrong, or indifferent, you know? But I don't know. And I will owe that to the podcast. Like, I'm going to literally sit down with it and be like, when was that moment where I felt, okay, this is taking root, that now I could truly start being my authentic self? So I don't know. I owe that. And I'll let you know too, Nick. I'll be like, hey, I remembered. But
Well, you know, at the end of every episode, I ask all the guests if they can name a person, practice, or experience that has supported their queer spirit to flourish. And so it doesn't have to be a person. It can be an experience just one time that happened. And it can be something recent. It doesn't have to be something, you know, from 10, 20 years ago.
That's a true statement.
So I think they're just, I really like asking that question and hearing people's answers and getting listeners to think about it and what has supported them, and maybe how can either, you know, the work that I'm doing or the work that the guests are doing bring support to them, so they don't feel so alone in whatever they're going through.
I do find that there's you know, just in listening to your podcast and the unique perspectives that their guests bring on, I do find that, and this is just a commonality with all humans, we have so much shit to unpack. Like, even to get to the truth, like, you have to go through like a labyrinth of of trauma, you know, to really get down to what is the truth that's underneath there. And, you know, people that have you know, some kind of spiritual practice, some kind of artistic expression, some kind of outlet that allows them easier access to those moments of truth for themselves, and gives them perhaps the courage or the ability to deal with all the trauma that they have to unpack along the way to get down to that. It's really fascinating. And I find it so amazing that, you know, that there are so many different avenues for people to get there, you know, that it just reinforces this notion that, you know, there's no one right way, right? To find your own truth, to step into who you are, and to, you know, to build yourself up from, you know, from that place of truth and honesty.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, you hit the nail on the head with the T word, trauma. You know, that's the main thing that I focus on with a lot of my clients. And, you know, a lot of people they have a skewed idea of what trauma is, you know, and, you know, I've had clients who come in who have literally had tons and tons of trauma from childhood, and then I bring up that word and they're like, I don't have trauma. What do you mean? They're like, you know, and it's not that they don't think that the thing that happened to them was bad. They just don't identify that as trauma. They think about trauma. Most people hear PTSD, like war veterans, you know, that kind of thing, and they're like, well, that, you know, that's what trauma is. I don't have these flashbacks, but they do, and they have all these other kinds of symptoms that, you know, once I start to define it and sort of say, well, this experience and this symptom and this symptom and this symptom, those are all symptoms of trauma. And then also, as you said, I would agree that there are all different ways of getting to that and working through it, and it's going to be different for everyone. So, you know, that's also part of why what I'm really inspired in bringing the podcast is just to give these different perspectives to people to see, hey, what might work for you.
So your field, were you always interested in this? Is this something like, even as a kid, you're like, I like helping people unpack the trauma, I like people helping people? Or is it something that you went through and you got the tools and you're like, I need to be able to share this now?
Yeah.
Oh, come on, little Nicholas.
Little Nicky.
Right.
Well, you know, my parents would tell you that when I was a kid, I was always a little bit, you know, wise beyond my years, or a little bit more mature. Like, my parents would sit in the living room with their friends and talk, and I would just like going and sitting with them, and I would just listen.
Yeah.
And I was always like, what are they talking about? This is really interesting. And, you know, that kind of thing. But to be perfectly honest, I think that when I got older, a way that I started protecting myself before I came out was I would ask people about them. And I think that's really important to share with people, that, you know, and it doesn't mean that doing that is bad or wrong, but just to notice that as a possible defense mechanism, because it can be scary to let people close and let people in. If people ask you questions about yourself, it's just like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what's going to be safe. I don't know how you're going to react, right? And that just became a pattern even after I came out. And so, you know, I was always talking to my friends like, what's going on in your relationship? Tell me about your problem. Let's break it down, that kind of thing. And, my undergrad degree I studied graphic design, and, it was fine for a while. And then I just sort of had this moment where I lost my job and I didn't know what to do. And I spent a couple of years just sort of soul searching. And I actually was taking an astrology class just because I was interested in it. And one of my teachers told me about transpersonal psychology and how it's kind of this combination of psychology and spirituality, which is kind of what astrology is in a way.
Yeah.
And so I looked into it and I started telling all of my friends, I was like, what do you think about me becoming a therapist? And everyone was like, had a resounding yes. Like, yes, that's what you should do. I'm like, why didn't anyone tell me this before? Right? So I looked into it, and, there's a school right here in San Francisco where I was already living. And I started doing it. And what I realized as I started going through the training and the program and that kind of thing was how much I was doing it unconsciously, how much I was doing that just in all of my different relationships. And that, it's also a gift, that people just felt very comfortable with me. And sometimes people would open up to me without me even doing the slightest thing. I would say, how was your day? Or, oh, that's a cute dog. And they would just suddenly tell me all of their problems. And, it's also sort of, I realized also reflecting, looking back, that a lot of different people in my family on both my mom's and my dad's side, including my parents, they all have done different kinds of helping professions and positions. My dad was a high school teacher in a public school in downtown LA for many, many years. My mom was a secretary at a school. My uncle worked at World Vision when he traveled around the world helping feed people and get them supplies.
So it's in your lineage, it's in your DNA.
Yeah. And, even my grandfather, who I didn't know, he owned a liquor store. But I think that, there's a certain kind of connection that people have in a place like that, almost like the way you talk to a bartender. It's like you just open up. And my dad always said how my grandfather was kind of a pinnacle in his community, and it was a social environment too.
Yeah.
So I think that, I can't help but wonder he was like that. And then my grandmother on my other side, I'd be with her at the grocery store and people would always be talking to her. And so, and the same thing happens to my mom. People just open up to her and she's like, I don't want to hear this.
Right.
So, now I get paid for that. Yeah. And I know how to navigate those conversations if I see them start to happen in a non-work environment, to see like, all right,
tap out.
I'm just gonna leave that there.
What inspired the queer focus for you? Like, clearly you have an opportunity to service anyone from a psychotherapeutic perspective, and even from a podcast perspective. And I'm just curious about the connection specifically to the queer community.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think just me being queer myself and being in San Francisco, there's plenty of people to work with in that way.
Here's my money and my
That's real.
So it wasn't a big jump, but when I did first start seeing people as an intern, I was just getting whoever was given to me. I didn't really have much choice, and it's not like people sought me out specifically. They would just come to the counseling center. And to be perfectly honest, when I first started, I was a little nervous about working with straight men because I wasn't sure how they would feel with me, especially if they were just assigned to me and they had no idea who I was, and they're like, oh, well, now I'm working with this gay guy. I don't know if I want to talk to him. But then I realized is that straight men actually, I think, feel more comfortable if they're okay with me telling their problems to a gay man than to a straight man.
See that.
But then I also just started, attracting other kinds of clients and a lot of queer folks. And so actually the majority of if I'm going to pick any sort of broad demographic, the majority of my clientele are men, gay and straight. And but then of the men, the majority of them are gay. Gotcha. So, and I also work with, non-binary folks and trans folks and cisgendered women, gay and straight. But then when I started the podcast, I wanted to be a little bit more specific because I saw that there was space missing in, at least at the time that I started my podcast. I mean, I'm kind of surprised how big podcasts have just exploded even just in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
But when I first started, I was doing research on other podcasts that focus on queerness and spirituality together, and I didn't quite see what I wanted to do. I saw a lot of things that were related to organized religion, especially Christianity. And I saw a lot of stuff that was what I would call a little bit more new agey spirituality, which I think does have a place and a purpose, but I was wanting something a little bit more grounded. And I didn't see that. So I thought, well, this is the place. And so there's a need here. And, I don't think that my podcast has like millions of listeners and thousands of downloads, but I think that the people who do listen, the little bit of feedback I get on social media and in comments is that it is touching the right kind of people. And so, my goal is not to get a lot of people, but to get the right people and to support their needs.
Love that.
Amazing.
Where do you feel most, and obviously it's probably around trauma, but do you think after trauma, there's maybe an ego part of it that folks want to just almost hold on to that trauma? Because it's like, where do most people get tripped up trying to obtain like that connection between like your mind, your body, and your soul? And that might be a loaded question.
Yeah. I don't think it's ego that's holding on to the trauma. Okay. I think it's fear.
Got
really.
It.
A lot of people, they may have trauma and they've figured out ways to work with that in their lives, the way that they cope with it, their different coping mechanisms, even if they're healthy coping mechanisms. They're like, I'm good, right? I don't need to revisit these old wounds, this old memory. And so it really takes someone who is suffering to a certain degree and their coping mechanisms are not working for them, or their coping mechanisms are creating another problem because they're using drugs and alcohol or spending money or sex or anything like that are causing an additional problem, that they will actually seek out help. Because it does take a lot of courage to work on your trauma and to revisit those memories. And as a psychotherapist, it's really important to do that slowly with people, and you want to build rapport and connection and make sure that they have their own support systems and resources going on. And that takes time just to develop that before you can even go into the trauma, whatever it may be. And then, as I was saying, like with microaggressions, they just sort of build up, and a lot of people don't even think about it until you start pointing them out. A lot of people don't think of parental neglect as abuse, but it is a kind of abuse.
Absolutely.
Or especially queer folks, their parents might not have been overtly homophobic, but sort of covertly homophobic.
Them little side jabs oftentimes hurt more than the straight dagger to the heart.
Yeah.
A little funny walking boy over there,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, let me get my walk together, man. Oh shit. Exactly. It's like, I didn't know I was walking funny.
Yeah.
Shit.
Right.
I'm just walking. Just walking.
It's true. It's so true.
Or they just comment on the way that you dress, or the way that you talk, or who your friends are, or the music that you listen to, or whatever, So
true.
It just
that's interesting.
time.
Like now I'm thinking, I'm like, damn, there were some moments like that.
But the interesting thing, like I was having this conversation with a girlfriend of mine, and we were talking about, how one grows up. And, oftentimes people, because as a child, you're learning everything from your parents, you know, and your surroundings. So whatever it is that you experience is normal to you, even if it's not normal to anyone else. And it's only when you have that moment of separating yourself, that objectivity moment, where you kind of start to compare, like, oh, wait a minute, your parents didn't make you diet since you were 7 years old, or your parents didn't, you know, didn't talk about the way that you walk, or, you know, oh, wait a minute, your parents, you know, let you play with dolls as a, you know, as a young boy. Like, it's only when you have those moments of revelation that you realize, oh, wait, that situation was, I mean, it was my normal, but that doesn't mean that it was right or that it was healthy.
Yeah. And then bring into that intergenerational trauma, you know, so even though our parents may not be queer, they have their own trauma that has trickled down, or even, you know, generations and generations. And especially if we're talking about, you know, people from different POC communities and intergenerational trauma because of oppression and slavery and all those other things, that is trickling down. And then you throw in, like, oh, now I'm queer and I have to deal with that on top of that, and the way that my parents have dealt with that and my grandparents have dealt with that, you know, it's hard.
Yeah, you don't realize you're taking on maybe some of their coping mechanisms that they were doing this to survive, yet not realizing that it wasn't healthy for them. And now you have it and you think it's healthy. You're like, oh, well, that's how they did it. No, they were coping, and you don't realize it. And that's a lot of stuff that, as I've gotten older, that I'm like, just seeing your family and your parents and people, like, growing up in the church, them as human, take off the lens of just like respect and like just the adult lens, just seeing them as a human, but like, man, there's a lot of stuff that they were doing and saying because they didn't have the tool set to grow and to cope better and things like that. So that, and talking about the layers of baggage, sheesh. You know, that's
avoidance, fight, flight, like all of these kinds of tools to, you know, to deal with things that are going on, and the impact that it has on, you know, the people around them.
Like you said, the tools to deal with, because I find myself being like, and I said this plenty of times, like, I'm not old school with my parents, you know, like the generational stuff that got passed down, like it ended with me, you know, and I'm now that sibling who's encouraging my younger siblings to be like, okay, Rhonda and Harold are not supposed to talk to you like this. Well, we are a unified front. We're stopping that in the tracks. And then I'm at the same time, and you're not going to teach your children to be like that either. Like, it's like, you know, but just getting to that point of, you know, kind of being honest and like going that route, because it's the uphill battle when you have a generational thing that you have to tackle with like your own parents. Because it's like, I'm not being disrespectful. I love you enough and love me enough to make sure that we are growing together. And so I feel like sometimes, you know, when you're going through that work with your parents, you end up being afraid that you're going to be disrespectful or harmful for them, or you don't want, you know, like, oh, they raised me, they did all these things for me. It's like, well, hold on, stop. They're using it as a crutch because they're parents. They did what they were supposed to do. So you don't owe them anything for being parents, if that makes sense. You can be grateful for them choosing to do the right thing, but you don't owe them, you know, because they did those things. And that's something I've been having to deal with my own therapist, is learning how to be like, stop making excuses for why they still continue to do what they do now. It's like, no,
One of the things I think
that. Oh, go ahead.
No,
I was just gonna say, please. I think that, you know, in a lot of families, the respect piece is a really big thing, and so people are like, well, I have to respect my parents, I have to honor my parents, and that kind of thing. But you also have to respect and honor yourself. And you can still be respectful to your parents without being nasty to them, but still set a boundary. And that's really hard to learn, and it's hard to figure that out. So it takes a lot of work with people to even just get all of the garbage out before they can have like a calm conversation, or attempt to even have a calm conversation with their parents, to set those boundaries. So
I was just gonna comment really quickly, just switching gears back to the podcast, because we can quickly go into like psychotherapy ourselves. It's very quick for us to dive in. But you know, one of the things I really appreciate about your podcast is the diversity of individuals and perspectives that you bring on, in terms of, you know, those that have chosen a certain path to express themselves and or, you know, dive into a practice that serves them. And I'm just curious, you know, as you think about, you know, this journey of your own personal journey with the podcast, what out of it has been most rewarding for you?
I think, well, a few things come to mind. The first is, and I've talked about this on the podcast since I started noticing it, was the way that people start to discover their connection to their spiritual practice at the same time that they're coming out. And that's really interesting to me, which shows me that there is this connection between, or can be a connection in the brain and the body and the whole being to spirituality and sexuality. And, you know, the ways that it's kind of the opposite of what we see in particularly Christian religions, where we've separated the body from the spirit, which is, you know, separating sex from spirit, or sexuality or gender identity and that kind of thing. And so that's been really interesting to me to have that confirmed over and over and over again, the way that people are like, yeah, you know, it's like in my teens or early 20s when I started coming out and I started exploring this particular spiritual practice or something like that, when, you know, things kind of gelled for them and they had almost like a spiritual psycho-spiritual sexual awakening in a way. So that's one thing that's been really interesting. And then the other has just been, you know, as I said, you know, I really don't know how many people are listening. I can see downloads and, you know, people following me on social media, but every once in a blue moon, I will get an email from someone who tells me how a particular episode struck them. And that's honestly what keeps me going, because as you guys know, doing a podcast is a lot of work. Doing a podcast alone is a lot of work. You guys sort of have each other to divvy up the work, on top of, you know, the regular jobs that we have, because I think you guys all have, you know, we all have jobs that we do, because the podcast is, you know, we do this as a labor of love. This is not really something we're making money from, or a whole lot of money from. And you know, the time, every time I'm just like, oh, it's time to start the season again, and I have to do this and I have to do that, and, you know, organizing all this stuff. It's when I hear those stories from people is really what motivates me and inspires me to keep going, because I'm just like, oh, this is doing something, this is needed, this is wanted, this is helping people somewhere. Especially people far away, you know, when I hear people in other countries, or in just even in the United States, but maybe they're in a remote town or something like that, and they don't have exposure to these kinds of thoughts or ideas or experiences.
Love that. We could talk to him all day. Like, I feel like every guest we say this, but it's just like, I just get so interested, because I mean, there's so much of his story. And check out this podcast. Before I even get further in the episode, where can they find your podcast, and what is your social handle and all that too, so they can, while they're listening to this, check you out ASAP.
So the podcast is pretty much all the major places. It's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. So if they just search The Queer Spirit, or if you can go to thequeerspirit.com and you can find it on my website there. My Instagram is Holistic Queer Healing. And then there's also a private Facebook community group for people who are wanting to connect a little bit more deeply with other listeners and have conversations and that kind of thing. And that's just the Queer Spirit community on Facebook. So that's, and you can, if you just find the show on any of the podcast players, there's also links for all of that in the show notes too, so people
definitely
can find
check it out. Like, I just love how every episode is just a like distinct thing, and I'm like, oh, I haven't thought about that. Oh, damn, I need to think about that. Oh, damn, now you got me in my feelings today. So I'm so here for it. But we're gonna have him stick around. We're gonna have him for the Ask Your Aunties and everything else. So what time is it right now?
Ask your auntie. Yes.
I don't know where that came from, my spirit. Oh man. So you have it, Dawon?
I got her. Okay. This is from Anonymous. So, aunties, I've been pondering about going to a clothing optional resort after the pandemic, of course. But one thing that's making me a bit reluctant. Now, I don't mind being naked in the slightest, but I am the textbook definition of being a grower, not a shower. I say that when I'm flaccid, I'm maybe 2 to 3 inches, depending on the warmth. But when I get hard, it grows to 8.5 inches.
Oh, he had to stunt.
So my question is that something people notice and take into consideration? And will that hinder any chances of meeting new cuties?
I mean, they missing out.
That part.
If that's what you hung up on,
no pun intended, and pun intended.
You missing out.
Well, let's give our resident auntie Limoncello the opportunity to ponder this grower, not a shower dilemma.
Well, I've never had this question before, so I'm gonna need a minute to think about it. But I think that it depends what their goal is. Are they going there to meet people for dates, meet people for hooking up, to just hang out and have fun? Maybe start by going somewhere where it's warm. So that you're not hiding so much. Or maybe go with a friend that you've shared this intimate detail of your life with, and other people will see you with him. Or I don't know. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I get it, especially in the gay community, because it always comes back to some sexualized moment, it seems like. But it's just like, go enjoy yourself. Like, I think you're probably thinking about it way more than anyone there is thinking about it, because everyone knows what it is. Everyone, especially like if you've been around the block or two, you know that there's growers and showers and all in between, and the spectrum of penis sizes out there, So I think we put so much more pressure on ourselves in that regard than necessary, quite honestly. It's a nude resort. Go have fun. And here's the thing about like nude resorts. You don't have to be nude. So if you're not comfortable being naked, have a Speedo on, have board shorts on, whatever makes you comfortable, until you get even more comfortable and realize, oh, wait, hold on. Like, there's sizes galore here and things like that. Like, I personally have been to a nude resort, and I get the anxiety potentially if you have never been to one, of thinking, oh, do I compare to this person and that person? Are they going to like me? Do I not? Especially if your goal, like you were saying, Nick, is to potentially maybe hook up and things like that. But I think you're putting unnecessary pressure on yourself. And then, like Jerrell said, they missing out. But, like the one that does want to link up with you, surprise, bitch.
Right. They're gonna be like, "Oh no, I wasn't ready.
Right.
I wasn't ready. My expectations were here. You took me here. I need to be about here."
Right.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, I think there might be something to unpack though, with just that self-confidence and stuff, loving which you have. Like I said something like that last weekend about like the conversation last week was like, why does people have to lie about the size of the penis? And I think just own, accept what you have, and really just live in that. And I think if you got to a point there, if you got to that point, I don't think it would really bother you so much as far as what other people would think. And I agree with both Kerel and Nick. Just it's optional, so take a breath. Just if find you a little pocket where you feel comfortable if need be. You don't have to circuit the whole damn place, you know. Right. Maybe you found you a little bench, a little, you know, a little part where you're like, okay, I feel comfortable here. I ain't in everything, you know, and that works too. But I mean, at the end of the day, you have more than what some people wish they had. And I think there's something to be grateful with that alone. And I think if you just shifted your mindset a little bit, you will find yourself 100% more comfortable and confident going into that resort.
I also imagine that if this person has never been to one, they would be surprised to see what it actually looks like and the way that different people's bodies look and the different levels of erection versus softness that people have throughout the day or throughout the hour and based on location. And that a lot of those, I mean, just again, depending on where he's going, some of them have a lot more sexual energy and some of them have a lot lower sexual energy, and they're more, you know, naturist. And it's just like, we just like being naked, not because we all want to have an orgy, but just because we don't like clothing. Exactly. So it just depends.
It's you hit the nail on the head for me. That was really my point. You know, a lot of times these places exist because, you know, people just want the freedom of just being their natural selves. And it's not a sexualized thing. Although, you know, there are people that, you know, can, just like any situation, like you can go to the supermarket and make it a sexual thing, you know, and try to find somebody to hook up, right? Go to the Piggly Wiggly or something, you know. But, you know, like if clearly this is a person that's never been to kind of a nudist or a nudity free space. And, you know, I appreciate questions like this because, you know, it helps to open people's minds so that you can compartmentalize the sexual part of it out of it and just recognize that this is just a space where, for those who choose to, can be 100% nude and there's no, you know, judgment and all that kind of fun stuff. And whether you're a grower or not is really, you know, irrelevant until you get into the bedroom. Just facts, right?
And even, you know, then so find the people that makes it irrelevant, you know? It's just like, you don't have, like, I feel like, and again, it's like, I understand the energy behind it, but I think once you become maybe a little more comfortable with yourself and realize a lot of people like just don't care in the moment, then you just take a breath, struggle with what you got. And then if someone does care, then, and that's a problem, then you don't need to be hooking up with that human, you know?
I think it does go back to intentionality. Right?
Yes.
Like, what is your intention of going there? You know, because there are vast majority of people that go to nude resorts, right, are going there because they just don't want to wear clothes or want to have the option of being able to walk around without any clothes, and that's it, right? And while they're there, you know, they may decide to hook up, they may not, or whatever. But their intention is really to not wear clothes, you know. So I can understand for someone who's never perhaps, you know, been to, you know, a new resort or clothing optional resort, who's never been to a clothing optional beach, who's never been to like these environments, you know, may look at this as, oh, this is like basically a different, it's like a bathhouse without it being inside a bathhouse kind of situation. Your viewpoint may be very skewed more towards the sex part of it. And yes, that can be something to think about. But the intention of these places is really just to provide a space where, you know, if you want to eat, you want to drink, you want to swim, you want to lay out, you want to do whatever,
without
you can do it
lines.
without thank you, without tan lines, you know. And so my advice to, you know, to Anonymous is, you know, if you're going into this situation, you know, thinking of this as like a hookup situation, and that your chances of connecting, you know, with people at this nudist resort is going to be lessened because, you know, you're not at full display, you have, in my opinion, you have a couple of options. You could either A, choose not to go, B, stock up on some enhancement options, the little blue pills that allow you to show what you're working with. I was going to say, be on full display then. Right. You know, or go and use your apps to hook up with people that are intentionally looking to hook up, you know, like those are your options, you know. But I would challenge you to think about your intention for going to one of these places, even if it's just for the novelty of it, and then really utilize those resources that I just mentioned as a means to the ends that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'm hearing with Anonymous is they're kind of going from 0 to 100.
That part.
You know, they're going from I've never been to how do I go and meet some guy, right?
Yeah.
Or person. I don't know. They said cutie, so we don't know what Anonymous likes.
That's
but
true.
I think we're all assuming that this is a cisgendered gay man.
Yeah.
But I would say, you know, maybe try going someplace that's mixed, you know, that has men and women, gay and straight. And so make it just about being comfortable with your body.
Yeah.
And being comfortable interacting with another person in a non-sexual, you know, or flirtatious way. You know, go and talk to some women, or, you know, go and talk to some straight men and just see how that is, just interacting with people, being comfortable in your body before you go all the way to how do I hook up or meet someone that I want to date, and, you know, who's going to possibly judge my body in a particular way.
Yeah, or like to Nick's point, like try like even a new beach before, you know, first, you know, somewhere where it's not costing you, you don't have to go all out your way. Nick, in San Francisco, there's this really cool gay, like nude beach right by the bridge. What's that? Do you know the nude beach that I'm talking about? It's
well, there's Baker Beach, and then there's a particular part of it. I can't remember
but kind of like a little around the corner there. Yeah.
Girls like, remember when I saw you, Nick, at that beach? What was the name of that bush called that I saw you?
No, but remember
pile of rocks.
Right. But remember I told y'all Fizz and I went to a new beach for his birthday, you know, and that was that's Baker, like I guess north of Baker. But yeah, like, but at that nude beach, I mean, you have everyone there. Like you have, you know, gay, straight, you know, trans, you had everybody, you know, all body sizes and all ethnicities. It was just really amazing and really diverse. And I thought that was amazing. Was
that your first time to a nude beach?
That was my first time to a nude beach, honestly. Okay. And I thought it was perfect. I was like, wow. Like, and it wasn't there like people just trying to show out and be like, look at me. It was people just knew that a beach, just having a good time, having some drinks, you know, sunbathing, listening to music, smoking some weed, like getting in the water. And then I heard about some damn sharks and I said, no, bring my back.
Getting my ass out this water.
No, but that was amazing. And I would highly recommend doing something like that.
Yeah. There's a freedom in it. Like it goes back to literally you can't hide from anything. Like you're literally just stark ass naked. And there's a weird freedom behind it. Yes, there's an anxiety potentially at first, but once you kind of
it don't last long.
It doesn't, because you realize nobody's really looking at you. No one's checking. Like they're with their crew, whatever, you know, and that's what you kind of finally realize, like, hold on. Nobody's checking me unless they want to, like, you know, unless you're giving that energy. And so, yeah, I think, Nick, you nailed it. It's just like maybe that 0 to 100 moment. Okay, go 0 to 20, boo. Go 0 to 30, you know, like you could go 65. So, that's an interesting
question. Encourage yourself being naked around home more often too. You know, getting used to just being in your own skin. Like, shit, I don't got no pants on right now. Like,
not surprising.
Like, that's the weekend. I mean,
well, community. Continue to send your questions to aya@minorietyreport.com or DM us, text us if you're our friends or whomever. But we continue to like these questions. And that's a good one. That was a different kind of question that we haven't had before. So appreciate sending that in. Again, aya@minorietyreport.com or DM us on social, Minority Report, pretty much everywhere. So yeah,
and if you're a grower and a shower, you know, you can DM us those,
you
know, videos too.
The before and after.
Yeah, the before and after. We'll share with you, Nick.
Yeah, we'll share with you too.
Like, just drop them in the DM. You know,
I know Anonymous did stunt. He's like, well, you know, when it is a rack that's 8.5.
Damn, and I'm over here below the camera being like. Like,
I love it. Had to throw that in. I was like, okay,
right.
that's
well,
right.
Speaking of
that whole like that whole penis envy is like such a, like, it's so pervasive just for men. You know, it's so pervasive, and it occupies so much energy in like our world in terms of what we have versus what we want versus what we like and all of that kind of fun stuff. And you know, the more that we can just get to a place of, you know, just appreciating who you are and how you're made, you know, like the less anxiety you can be carrying with you into other things,
and the more
specifically
fun you
related
can
to that.
have.
Yes, ma'am.
That part.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Speaking of living, I want to say, speaking of living in your truth, though, and in your body, Lil Nas X music video. I'm here for it. I just love how just queer as fuck that
he was getting effed by the devil.
Let me tell you, that lap dance, and he spread some legs. I said, you better flexible. Do that. Okay.
Yeah.
I just thought it was
the devil looked a little asleep, though. I was wanting the devil to engage a little bit more. It's just like, are you even there? Are you enjoying this?
He was not bothered. He was not bothered. For somebody who, you know, you live off of debauchery and doing the most. I was looking for a little bit, you know, he was a little like dead in the eye.
Exactly. Yes.
I wanted a little bit more.
Right when Nas came down that stripper pole, legs spread, and I was like, "You better go down this damn pole, Lil Nas X. You better go
with the knee-high boots,
right?
On.
With the Mary J. Blige, he had the Mary J. Blige boots on.
Okay, look, and not to have, you know, like the edges all curled up, too, bitch, with the wig laid. I was like, you better come through.
Like, I'm just here for a young Black queer man doing that. Period. Like this song. It's okay. The video, quite frankly, was fine. I've seen better on both, but we have not seen a young Black queer male do that. Yes. And like, especially the platform he has. You know,
just to second that.
Everything.
Yeah, just to second that. You know, we talk all the time about the importance of representation, right? And you just don't see the level of financial investment from a major record label, you know, in queer artists like this. And it's, you know, Lil Nas X has, you know, some cute music, right? It's I'm not running to the discotheque. You know?
Oh Lord.
I was trying to pull an old word out.
Right. Oh Lord.
Look a little long in the tooth word. But you know, like we're not running to like the dance floor, you know, for this particular song, but it's so nice to see like one, the investment that the studio is making in a queer artist, number one, and number two, the message that does send to other up and coming queer artists, because you never really know who you are influencing and impacting, you know, like the sphere of influence, a 360 degree of influence that you have. And there's some
7-year-old kid
person, right, you know, questioning their sexuality, their gender identity, their gender expression, their creative, you know, their creative investments, whatever, they're questioning, and they may see a video like this, and that gives them, you know, the license to be able to step more firmly into the truth of who they are. And I think that is, you know, so powerful. And also the fact that, you know, we see so much within, you know, cisgendered, you know, heteronormative portrayals of music videos, the sexuality that's being portrayed overtly. You know, you look at the Cardi B's, you look at the, you know, whomever, you know, the Lil Babies, you look at any artist, and they're leaning so heavily into their sexuality. And, you know, for homosexuality, we as, you know, as queer individuals, I'm using that term broadly, for queer individuals, we've been demonized heavily, you know, for our sexual expression.
It's like, we don't want to see that. We don't want, Or even like the Cadbury egg commercial recently. The uproar of that shit. And it's just like, no, like we make up with our husbands and partners, and
just like you
do.
Just
we want to see them shake their ass just like you do.
If Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion can, you know, get up there and pump their pussies against each other, you know, on a big ass bed, you can see Lil Nas X sliding down a stripper pole. Yes. That's going to be a soundbite.
Got it.
Mark the clock. But you can see Lil Nas X sliding down from heaven into hell on a stripper pole, and then bust it wide open in front of Satan, and then steal his crown and then dance away.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
You know, like that kind of empowerment is really is what I live for.
I agree. It was the Mary J.
And
Blige
he just looks so damn cute.
Right, and the Calvin Kleins. I was like, come on, sponsorship. I was like, I saw them CKs. Okay, Calvin Klein. I see that sponsorship.
And he got some good, like he probably worked a good like month and a half to 2 months with a poll worker to get them moves, because you saw
him a clip on his IG of him. He's like, me working on the poll in January, and I was like, good.
Because you saw the moves, the way that he moved his legs around, and then he bust them open and then bring them back. I was like,
oh, you from Atlanta? We know how to do it down here. You know, all the strip clubs here, and I better see you at Swinging Richards, Lil Nas.
I need to go. I need to make a trip down to Atlanta, like ASAP, so we can party up, girl.
Yes, absolutely.
Is Richards a strip joint there?
It's a gay strip joint, and they get fully naked, like naked. Like
naked.
0 to 8.5 in 8.5 seconds.
Love.
It's the clothing optional resort of Atlanta.
And it's fun. It is fun.
Tag them in this. That's another
absolutely
clip. Tag them in that one. The clothing optional resort of Atlanta.
It's so true. But and it's like one of the last ones, honestly, in the world, quite frankly. Like they've gotten rid of a lot of them. I think like there's maybe 2 or 3 left in the US. There's a few in like Montreal, a few I think in like Barcelona or Madrid, one of those over there, but there's not many left. And honestly, we thought they were already kind of going through some stuff before COVID, and so we're like, damn, is COVID gonna really kind of shut it down? But they're hanging on. So shout out to Swinging Richards.
More ways than one.
right. But before we even get out of here, though, too, we definitely got to shout out and thinking of and the prayers and everything to the communities like Boulder, Colorado, Virginia Beach. Like, we're tired of talking about mass shootings, specifically by crazy white dudes, and being able to get guns literally day of. I don't even know what else to say, quite frankly. We need gun reform. We need to do something. And especially while we have the majority at the federal level, we need to find whatever loophole, like they're finding loopholes for these gun folks. We need to find our own loopholes to shut this shit down, because it's ridiculous. Yeah. It's ridiculous to wake up, like it's multiple times a week at this point, reading the news of something else going down. So yeah.
You know what?
That's the one positive thing about COVID. That was the one positive thing about COVID, with people staying their asses at home.
Well, they said it went up even during COVID. They said it went up
really?
50%. And like COVID and oh boy were just such the main focus of the news. But there was an article that just came out the other day. They said mass shootings went up 50% in 2020.
I literally feel like I'm in a Black Mirror episode, or like a Twilight Zone, because I have no concept of time whatsoever. Like so we're recording this on March 27th, right? I literally feel like Biden has been the president for the last year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like literally, I feel like but it's only been 2 months.
Yeah.
It's like two and a half months or so. So, since the 7th of January. So, like it's wild. Like I know that it takes legislation.
Or the
takes
20th
time.
of January. 21st
of January.
Yeah. Me and dates and names and that kind of stuff.
I had to think a little help
because you remember the 6th of January.
Right. So we remember the 6th.
That was a whole other situation. But even still, the 20th of January. So literally, it's been 2 months, 7 days since he was sworn into office. And he's been able to get some big legislation through, and he's signed a gang of executive orders. And it's just going to take some time. But it's just like,
he has a lot. I have
no sense of of time at all anymore, because my days and my weeks and my months and my years are all like blurring together, you know. Yeah. And he's literally been in office for 2 months.
Yeah. So it's like, we know you have a lot on the plate, Biden, but woo, we got to get this done before the next midterm elections as much as we can.
And I would love to advocate for like this, like abolishing the term of white supremacy and using the term white supremacist, because it, in my opinion, it further, and I'm sure there are others that believe this too, so I don't like own this idea, but it does in a sense reinforce this notion of like there is layers of superiority between the races, and there isn't. This is not white supremacists attacking, you know, and murdering, you know, people of color. These are white terrorists. We need to call it the shit what it is. You know, we need to call it what it is so that, you know, we can have the appropriate reaction, you know, legislatively and socially, etc., and not buy into this notion, because first of all, you look at these people, they ain't superior to nobody. Let's start with that. You know, with your snaggletooth and pot bellies and, you know, and pigeon toes, you know, like, I mean, you are not superior to me and my melanin. I'm sorry. No, not happening. So, but beyond that, you know, this notion that, and I blame part of it with the media, like they have to step their pussy up when it comes to like the nomenclature and the language that they're using with this, because when we have things like domestic terrorism happening, there was that guy that was arrested that had like a whole bunch of semi-automatic weapons going to Kamala Harris's house, like Monday, Tuesday of this week, or like the latter part of last week, 2 weeks ago, you know. So like these are not white supremacist acts. These are national, like within the United States, terrorist acts that are happening against our own people, and we need to call a thing a thing. And
we need to get to these laws so they can't get these guns so quick and so easily. 100%. Literally, they're getting them day of.
Yeah.
No background checks in some states. Like,
and some of them even with background checks. So it's like, okay, I don't see it. Like the Atlanta shooter, they didn't see anything in his record. So they were like, here you go.
Yeah.
And like, it shouldn't be that easy. Like, you shouldn't be able to get a gun, but you can't even vote damn here in Georgia.
That was just right.
So like, come on now. Like, come on. So anyway, but Nick, thank you so much. Like, we're gonna have to have you back, because like I have like 20 billion more questions. I might just be DMing you, be like, hey, I got a question about this. But again, tell them your social media and tell them where they can find you so they can check out your podcast and your social.
So I'm at thequeerspirit.com, and you can also find me on Instagram at Holistic Queer Healing, and Facebook, the Queer Spirit Community.
Love it.
And thank you for having me. It was a pleasure being here and hanging out with you guys. And I hope that one or a couple or all of you will come on my show too.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Just let us know. We there, boo.
All right.
We are there. So community, stay safe out there. I mean, there's just a host of reasons to stay safe, sadly so. But wash your hands, wash your legs, wash your ass. And we'll see you next week.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.